So if you match up what the World Economic Forum says are the top 10 job skills of the future, and you match up what skills come naturally to neurodivergent people trying to fit into a neurotypical world, they overlap perfectly.
I'm Patrice Washington, and this is the Redefining Wealth podcast, where authenticity leads to alignment and abundance. Join us each week as we peel back the layers on what wealth truly means and dive into conversations that inspire, connect, and empower you to live your richest life. Get ready to challenge the status quo. It's time to redefine wealth for yourself. You're listening to the Redefining Wealth podcast with Patrice Washington, and this is the space that you come back to each and every week to learn more about what it means to chase purpose, not money. And that's because you understand that wealth is so much more than just money and material possessions. In this community, we believe, we understand, we unite around the 12th century definition of wealth, which says it's about the condition of well-being and happiness. And when we're not careful, we will confuse our pursuit of just money and career success and awards and accolades with truly being happy and fulfilled. And in this community, we recognize that when we are trying to chase after those things, we never quite fill the void that having meaning and purpose in our lives are intended to fill. And something that I've been learning firsthand over this last year or so is the beauty and the power of neurodivergence. Not because I myself identify with it, but because I've had an opportunity to coach and work with more clients who identify as neurodivergent. And my loving partner actually has been coming to grips with his neurodivergence. And in supporting him, I've learned so much about it and what a gift it can actually be if we allow it to be. And, you know, there's so many studies that talk about how many adults are recognizing that they just learn differently and maybe have known it for a long time, but haven't felt free to acknowledge it, especially women in the workplace. And so I wanted to invite someone that I trust to have this conversation with us. And I want to invite you, if you don't identify personally with being neurodivergent, I guarantee you, your child, your spouse, a friend, a family member, someone around you may be struggling with accepting the reality that they could be neurodivergent. And what a gift your understanding and your openness would give them this holiday season. So after you hear the affirmation of the week, you're going to hear my conversation with Josh Crafford. Josh has committed his life to mastering the art and science of learning. Professionally, he played a leading role in designing and creating several international learning and development departments within Fortune 200 companies like GE Capital. He also serves as a strategic partner leading workshops and guest lecturing for various universities because he specializes in neurodivergent strengths and creating inclusive cultures, which we are definitely attempting to do here. We are trying our best here at Redefining Wealth. Josh actually produced the documentary Blessed with Dyslexia and Neurodiversity, which can be found at neurocreatives.org. He holds a Master's of Art in Design, Management, and Innovation, and he brings a unique perspective wherever he goes because he himself is neurodivergent. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Josh Crafford. This week's affirmation is, my uniqueness is a gift. Who I am is a unique gift, and I embrace it as a source of strength, creativity, and brilliance. My mind operates in ways that offer fresh perspectives and untapped potential, allowing me to contribute my own genius to the world. I trust that my purpose is deeply connected to my unique way of thinking, and I lean into my strengths with confidence and pride. I celebrate the parts of me that make me different, knowing that they are the key to unlocking my highest potential. Each day, I honor my uniqueness, using it as a powerful tool to fulfill my purpose and be a blessing to others. Declare with me today, my uniqueness is a gift. Welcome to the Redefining Wealth podcast, Josh.
Thank you, Patrice. Love being here.
I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to know that you are an actual purpose chaser, someone who listens to the podcast regularly. And I'm so grateful for how you have opened my eyes to how neurodivergence has been on the rise for adult women in particular, but adults realizing that they have it for so long. So thank you for the work that you do. But I just want to dive in because I realize in my community, more and more women, adult women, are being diagnosed, but also accepting that this is a part of their story. When were you diagnosed and what were you diagnosed with?
Great question. And I love that more people are being diagnosed and having it as part of their journey, even if it's just self-diagnosed. That's for adults, that's a big thing as well. My journey with this started when I was 7 years old. I couldn't read or write. And the State Department of Education had me take a bunch of standardized tests, very typical standardized tests, and called my parents and myself into the school when the results came back. And they pulled my parents into one room and I sat in the room next to them with the teacher, and they gave my diagnosis, this expert representative from the State Department of Education. So an authority figure in how we learn, right? Or at least I thought. And I didn't understand a lot of what they said at 7 years old, but the final sentence that they summarized everything with, it's still my earliest, clearest memory. They said, Josh might not graduate high school and don't count on college.
Wow.
If you remember back to when you're 7, and the question a lot of people are asked around that time is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And hearing a voice of authority from the State Department of Education saying, I might not graduate high school and don't count on college, was kind of did I hear that right? And then what happened was my mom started crying in the next room. And my hopes and dreams of what I wanted to be when I grew up were kind of washed away in her tears. And I never told them that I heard that, because the amount of guilt that I felt of there's something wrong with me, and I just made my mom cry at 7. That's just, I don't know, it kind of plagues your future outlook at yourself and your self-confidence and your self-worth, and you start to question. And then I had to stay back and repeat the 2nd grade. And then all my friends went on to the 3rd grade, and the new group of 2nd graders that came in were like, why are you here? What's wrong with you? And I couldn't even pronounce dyslexia or describe dyslexia. So at that age, they're all like, oh, he has cooties, just stay away from him. So I had to learn to try to mask that and pretend that I didn't have it and say, oh, no, that went away. And the way that we mask it, and I'm going to say we as in general, the majority of neurodivergent people, whether they know they have something or not, because humans are a societal creature and we need to fit in order to survive. We go with what the status quo tells us that we should be. So I became a practical joker at first, or class clown, and then kind of evolved into a practical joking punk in order to mask why I couldn't read well. So if I was ever called on to read out loud, and if it's a short paragraph or something, I try to laugh my way through it, kind of like I'm pretending that this is a joke to me, or I had a joke in my head. But if it was a long paragraph, sometimes I would just refuse to read. And I got kicked out of class a couple times for refusing to read. I would say I had a headache, or I'd say I didn't want to. And I did want to participate. I did want to do well, but to not be bullied or made feel differently, and to still live that lie that, oh, I outgrew this, I don't have it anymore, and not be picked on. I'd rather go with being kicked out of class than opening myself up for bullying or not fitting in.
Yeah. I can see how acting up felt more cool. Like people could perceive it as being more cool than potentially having cooties, which I haven't heard in literally 30 years, right? And as you were speaking, first of all, I got this deep sense of just compassion. I got chills as I was imagining you as a 7-year-old boy, hearing this from an authority figure, watching your mother cry, and then you taking on the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, the what is wrong with me. And goodness, I'm literally thinking of sitting in elementary school and thinking about Chester, who was the class clown, like every grade, getting in trouble, and all of these different people and the characters as you're growing up in elementary school. And you realize, wow, there was a possibility that they could have been struggling with neurodivergence and it going undiagnosed. And then the frustration of having parents and teachers and adults say things like potentially, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just sit down like so-and-so? Why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you perform this way? And not even having the language to be able to explain what you're feeling and how you're perceiving things. That is tough. It's tough enough being a kid, but adding all these layers, wow.
Yeah. And what I love about what's happening now and with the parents finding out that they have neurodivergence is because I think they're getting their kids diagnosed. And then when they're talking to whoever's diagnosing them, they're saying, well, they're displaying these traits. And the parent, the mom, is like, well, that's also describing me. So do I have it as well? And that's where a lot of the aha moments are happening. So dyslexia, I was diagnosed with back when I was 7. ADHD, I was diagnosed with during the pandemic because our company sent us all to work from home. And about around November, my wife was saying, can you go get diagnosed for ADHD? Because I think she could handle my energy in the evening times after I would come home from work, but having to deal with me all day long. And especially even across Zoom at work, you have to be straight. You have to look into the camera. You still have to, not fidget and sit still. The funny thing is, like, I have a ton of fidget toys under the camera that I can play with my hands to keep my brain active, which is nice because you can't do that in boardrooms and conference rooms in corporate environment. But here, if I wanted it, I have a bunch of little fidget toys.
So can I ask a question about that? Because just since really us talking about this more and more personally as friends for like the last year, I've just come into more awareness. And so even in that moment, as you are fidgeting with the toys, like what is actually happening that makes grabbing something feel good, or what is it? What's happening?
So there's a couple different ways that people learn. Some are visual learners, some are audio learners, some are kinesthetic learners. Kinesthetic is having to touch things. The other part of having something in your hands and fidgeting, my brain is always active. It's always has extra sensories out there. I don't want to say squirrel, but kind of think of it as like being hyper sensitive with your sight, with your hearing. So in order to kind of calm down those sensory or that sensory overload, having something in your hands, just kind of playing with that for whatever reason pulls those sensories in so that it kind of calms you or centers you a little bit more so that you can focus on, if there's a conversation or if you're supposed to be looking up at something, looking at someone. I don't know the science behind it, but I know that it just helps center you in, focus you a little bit more because we're looking for some type of stimulation. We get bored really easily. And if we don't have something that's stimulating our brain, then we can start to wander off and just either daydream or be distracted very easily. So it helps us concentrate more because our brain is stimulated by physically fidgeting with something.
Got it. Thank you for that. I'm thinking about you as a 7-year-old and being in class as a child all the way through just being in school. And for me, going to schools where I was in a college prep type of middle school, high school situation where we had classes for 2 hours, which was extremely long anyway for any child in sixth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade at that time. But my goodness, when you think about people who are just now being diagnosed as an adult, who were forced to sit in spaces like that for 2 hours. And I remember hearing things like, stop fidgeting, stop moving, stop this, stop that. How painful must that have been? Like, you were diagnosed, but the number of people who have gone undiagnosed for their entire lives until 30s, 40s, 50s for the first time. What types of masks do you see people put on as an adult? So as a kid, we can cover up, oh, I'm just going to joke my way through. I'd rather get kicked out of class. But what does that look like in your 20s, 30s, 40s?
Yeah, it's interesting because before COVID hit, we would all have to be in the office. So if you've ever seen, I would go back to, I was a pen clicker. So that's my fidget. This becomes your fidget toy. The pen becomes your fidget toy as an adult in a conference room or in a professional setting. So that person that's off to the side or in the middle or whatever, that's just sitting there clicking their pen that doesn't even realize they're doing it. Not to say that person has to be neurodivergent, not trying to call anybody out. No one should have to self-identify if they don't want to. But that, for me, I would have my pen and I'd be fidgeting with my pen, or I'd be doodling, or I'd obsessively be taking notes. Because for me, I don't even go back and read the notes that I take, but it helps solidify what I'm hearing by putting it down on paper, because you have to pay attention more to translate what it is that you're hearing to put it into your own notes. And then that physical act of writing down also helps solidify it. If you think each sense has memory attached to it, so you're hearing it, and then you're processing it, and then you're physically writing it. So you're engaging a lot more of your senses and you have to concentrate and pay attention more. So I would take notes to keep me from fidgeting. And that was a way to keep my brain and my hands active as well. So even right here, I have a notebook. I have probably a stack of 20 notebooks.
Me too.
Yeah. But that doodling as well. Doodling, even if you're just scribbling, you're still activating your brain. Like I said, I don't need to go back and relook at my notes, because that act of hearing something and concentrating and then just tying it to a physical movement helps. Doodling also helps. So if you're a parent or a teacher and you see a student doodling, they're paying attention and they're activating their brain. The other thing is, if you're talking, a teacher or even a boss or whoever, talking for a long time and someone's staring out the window and it looks like they're daydreaming, they're actually very intently engaging their brain, because what's happening inside my head is whatever you're talking about, I'm connecting it to different memories. I'm connecting it to different experiences. So it's not just taking in word for word what you're saying. I'm like digesting it and metaphors or analogies, or connecting it to deeper thoughts and memories, so that I'm really actively engaging on a deeper level. But in order to do that, I need to look away, because as soon as I make eye contact, it's going to snap me out of it. That goes back to caveman days. When we make eye contact with anything, you automatically, even if you're talking in front of a crowded room and you make eye contact with someone, they can tell that you're making eye contact with them. It's just a human survival mode that triggers the brain. So when we're looking out a window, we're intentionally, well, maybe not even intentionally, but subconsciously looking somewhere where we can go deep in thought.
Mm-hmm. So these societal expectations, though, that essentially, if I'm not looking at you, then that means I'm being disrespectful. Like, that's how I was raised, and I'm Belizean American, right? But if I were to look off when my grandmother, a teacher, anyone of authority was speaking to me, it would not be that I was concentrating or anything. It would be a sign of disrespect. And I can imagine, again, how difficult it is to even subconsciously be using these different practices so that you can focus and then not having the language to share with someone that you actually are paying attention. Because I find sometimes, Josh, that people want to misunderstand. Sometimes there's ignorance, and then there's just also like literally you just don't know, which in many cases I've learned so much from you. I just didn't know certain things. There was just no awareness. It's almost the privilege, if you will, of not being neurodivergent or not necessarily identifying with that you don't even think about it. You're just, kind of moving about your day unless you know someone or your child's been diagnosed or you are in front of it, right? But again, my heart just keeps kind of breaking for all the people I knew. Like some people may have been bad. Chester may have been quote unquote bad. I have not bad, but you know what I'm saying? Like maybe there were other things and it wasn't neurodivergence, but there is that reality now, like, oh my gosh, we can't just look at someone who is looking off. And even I see this all the time where people will apologize. They're like, I'm sorry, I was just thinking about something. And they don't even really need to apologize if that's just their process. But because of societal expectations, you might feel like you do.
Yeah, you're apologizing because of like you said, the expectations that are put on you, where even if you're fidgeting with a pen or something, it's like, oh, you must be bored. Am I boring you?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm in deep thought. And sometimes I would challenge my teachers and say, okay, let me explain to you what it is that I'm thinking about. And I could connect it on a deeper level. But half the time the teacher's like, no, I don't want to hear it. You're off daydreaming. And then you get kind of pigeonholed, or your brand then becomes, oh, you're the daydreamer, or, oh, you're the fidgeter, or you're the one that has outbursts or whatever it is. And you're kind of labeled as a troublemaker, especially if you're already kind of that class clown. So now you have the compiling effect of, oh, you can't sit still, you're a class clown. And we lean into those stereotypes. If you're told by authority figures that you are a class clown, you are a troublemaker, even if you don't want to be, subconsciously, you're like, okay, if that's what society is telling me that I am, if that's what an authority figure is telling me that I am, I must be. And then guess who you start to hang out with? Other troublemakers. And even if it's not for neurodivergence, but it's for something else, because once again, we're societal creatures. We need to find our cliques. We need to find our groups. This is how we survive.
Hey, Purpose Chaser, if you're ready to level up in 2025, you need to download the Redefining Wealth app. This is where Purpose Chasers from all over the world come together for early access to exclusive trainings, pop-up lives, powerful resources, and a like-hearted, supportive community. Get everything you need to align with your vision, stay accountable, and create lasting impact right at your fingertips. I'm so excited about everything the team and I are planning for 2025. Bi-monthly book clubs. We're talking about empowerment panels created by Purpose Chasers for Purpose Chasers with Purpose Chasers. It's going to be incredible. And if you have genius that you want to be able to share and you've been a part of this community for a while, you need to come in closer. There are people that need you. We want this to be about you, the Purpose Chasers, not me, Patrice Washington. I am simply here to hold space and to curate a safe, aligned, brave community. And that's what we're doing. So download the Redefining Wealth app today on your iOS or Android device. You can also go to redefiningwealth.app, and I can't wait to see you there. So Josh, what does that mean for the prison system? How many people are incarcerated simply because they likely were undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, it labeled the troublemaker, labeled the clown, and then just rose to that level of expectation in their lives?
Yeah, I love and hate that question. I love the question because we get a chance to talk about it. I hate the question because of the answer. So I literally just got goosebumps all over my skin, head to toe, because Even in juvenile hall, I think it's like 85%. So it starts at an early age. And then in prison, so just with dyslexia alone, over 50%, there was a study done by someone in Texas, and they went to several different prison systems and tested a big population of the inmates, and over 50% of the inmates had just dyslexia alone. And then you add ADHD on top of that, and I think it jumped up to 85, 90% again. The sad thing is, in some of the statistics that I've seen about the juvenile system, is a lot of these students, so I have ADHD as well, and there's inattentive and hyperactivity, two different types, or you could have both. So I have both. Yay. But that inattentiveness means, I have a court summons because I did some minor little thing that I got caught doing, and I miss my court summons because I'm either have to go to school or I have to go to work after school. And then once you miss that court date, then you start to go to juvie hall. And then once you're in that system, it's really hard to break it. And then there's the percentage of people that end up in the juvenile hall system that go to prison is a huge percent of it as well. It's just a downward spiral. Let me explain something, if I may take that question a step further, because me being a practical joking punk and hanging out with other practical joking punks and troublemakers from 7 years old and my first time in second grade to the 9th grade, that persona that I lived into, I leaned in. And a lot of my friends were starting to get expelled in high school freshman year for various reasons. I had the cops show up at my house once or twice. I'm from a very small town, luckily. So it wasn't, hey, we're just going to kind of embarrass you in front of your parents and let your parents know that you need to cool it in some areas. But very fortunate in that regard. But the other thing, the pivotal moment for me, and one of the messages that I want to share with your audience, is for everybody to kind of be a guide. You don't have to be a coach. You don't have to be a mentor. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be a boss. And by guide, I just mean, if you can help identify the strengths in others instead of focusing on the challenges, right? So there's two ways you can either focus on the challenges and continuously tell someone that they're bad or they're not good enough or they're not fitting in, which they already know, and it already pulls on their spirit and their soul. Or you can say, look, you're really strong in these areas. If you focus on those, there's greatness within you. And those probably tie to your passions, which is what you talk about and why I love listening to your podcast, because our messages are very similar. So when I was in the 9th grade, Mr. Holden was my freshman science teacher, and he was a practical joker himself. And he won Teacher of the Year multiple years because he was fun. And a week or two before April 1st, April Fool's Day, I said, hey, Mr. Holden, what's the best practical joke or prank someone's ever pulled on you on April Fool's Day? And he kind of looked at me and he's like, I've been here for 20 years and no one's ever gotten me. And he kind of laughed and turned around. And I'm like, oh yeah, challenge accepted. So April Fool's Day, one of the admins from the office calls him into the hallway for a second. I had a tube of like industrial super glue at the time and a pair of scissors. And I ran up and I just cut open the tube of super glue, put a huge dollop on his seat, and sprinted back to my desk. And it was in front of my entire freshman science class. Everybody saw me do it. As soon as my butt hit my seat, the door opened and he came walking through, and everybody's looking back and forth at him and then at me, at him and then at me. It's like, did he get away with it? And then Mr. Holden sat down, and 5 minutes later, he put his hands on the table and leaned forward to sit up. And when he went to get up, he realized, oh, something's wrong. And he slowly rolled back down and he just played it off for the rest of the day. He was a master at this. Luckily for him, it was the last class of the day. So he only needed to wait for that period to end, and then school got out. And then he figured out how to separate himself from his pants or from his seat. I don't know exactly how he did it. I didn't hang around to watch. But what happened is the very next day, after first period got out, all of the students from Mr. Holden's class flooded into the hallway, and it was a manhunt to find out who did it. And everybody's like, who superglued Mr. Holden to his chair? Who superglued Mr. Holden to his chair? And that happened the whole day. So I was anxious. And by the time our class rolled around, we all took our seats and Mr. Holden came strutting into the class, just all cool again. And he said, "Congratulations. You are the coolest group of freshmen that I've ever taught." And we're all kind of looking at each other like, what's going on? And he said, "If you see on the board behind me, he wrote all of our names on the board for that period and 150 points of extra credit to whoever the first person was that turned in the culprit that super glued him to his chair the previous day." So that's why it was a manhunt to find out who did it the whole day. And he said, "None of you ratted out your peer. You've been protecting your peer the entire day. But is the person that you've been protecting as cool as you are? Because if they don't come forward and turn themselves in the next 3 seconds, everybody in class gets detention." I'm like, crap. "I'm sorry, Mr. Holden. I did it." And I put my hand up and he said, "Crafford, hallway now." And he pulled me out in the hallway and it was quiet. It was empty. And for me, this was a badge of honor because I was a practical joking punk and I successfully pranked our science teacher. But in that hallway, this was the most pivotal moment of my life. And I didn't realize it at the time until I looked back at it. He gave me 2 options and he put my fate into my own hands by giving me those 2 options. But before he did, he said, "Look, if this was first period and someone had turned your name in, I would have just simply expelled you. But as the day went on and no one turned you in, I started to wonder why. So you must have some leadership skills for your peers to protect you." And then I started to think a little bit deeper that you're the first person in 20 years to successfully prank me as well. And you're only a freshman. So you must have some creativity skills as well. And then he gave me the 2 options. He said, option number 1 is you take your leadership skills and your creativity skills and you promise me you'll put them to good use. And you promise me that you'll go to college. And Patrice, honestly, at that time, I had zero intention of going to college because I gave power to the voice in the 2nd grade that said, don't even bother. And for the very first time, this was an authority figure that I respected outside of my parents that told me about my strengths. It was a strengths-based focus on leadership skills and creativity skills. And because I had zero intention of going to college, I looked him in the eye and said, "Well, what's option number 2? Just as a stupid punk again. And he put his finger right in my face and he said, "I expel your ass. You took it too far." And at that was like, whew, okay, this just got real. If I get expelled, then I'm going down a really bad path. And I'd probably, honestly, because I am smart and I'd have to put food on my table, I'd probably be in jail because I would have ended up in the system. And then once you're in that system, it's a very slippery slope downwards. But what he did was he gave me that gift of choosing to say, okay, I took it too far. I am a punk. And I have these skills or these strengths that I didn't recognize or realize or believe in myself. And from the next day on, what I had to do is like, you're an element of your environment. So if you look at your 5 closest friends, you are that same. I had to change my friend group out. And my freshman GPA at the end of my freshman year was a 1.9. What happened was I started to hang out with kids that wanted to go to college, were not getting expelled, were playing sports, and that's how I kind of met them through sports. And the way that we learn is by doing. Everybody is a hands-on learner. We only retain about 10% of what we hear and about 25% of what we see. But when we do something, it goes back to engaging all of our senses. When we do something, all those different muscle memories, all those different experiences interact different areas of our brain to be able to recall the lessons that much more. And we understand something on a deeper conceptual level when we do it. So what I did is with my new group of friends, we formed study groups and they would be able to explain things back in metaphors and analogies and experiences. and we'd teach each other to understand the concepts of what was being learned versus the neurotypical, just pure memorization to get an A on a test and then you forget about it. My GPA went from a 1.9 to a 2.4 sophomore year. And then that's 2.4 sophomore year to a 3.1 junior year. And I think it hovered around a 3.1 because I still have trouble with reading. I also have dyscalculia, which if anybody out there is listening and you think you get numbers mixed up, like you get letters mixed up, that's actually called dyscalculia. So I have dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, and then all of that comes with high anxiety because you're always constantly trying to fit in these norms. And I did actually get into college because now I was playing sports. So I was captains of sports teams. I was vice president of my class, and I was volunteer student of the year for doing a lot of extracurricular work outside of school as well. So if any employers are listening, you want to embrace your neurodivergent people because we don't just do our job. We do all these other extracurricular things as well.
That's actually why I wanted you to be here, because I do realize that, as we've talked about, there are a lot of people, and my community is mostly women, who have been undiagnosed for so long and may think they have something, not sure what, but they're masking it. And one of the things I loved about you from the very first time that we spoke is we talked about how people could actually embrace their purpose and expand their potential by embracing their neurodivergence as opposed to trying to push it out the way or out of sight, out of mind. But really, it's controlling your mind on a daily basis. So if someone is listening and they are thinking to themselves, well, maybe I do, maybe there is something there. You talked about not needing to be professionally diagnosed, but is there medication that supports any of these diagnoses, or is it really just more about learning practical skills and behavior?
Yeah, great question. With the ADHD, there is medication for that, and there's different types and different levels of medication. So this is one of the things that COVID actually helped me with. Then my wife said, go get diagnosed. I tried a few different types of medication. I do take a very small dose of a daily medication that takes the edge off. It's funny, the Marvel does a great job. And if you look at each of the Marvel superheroes, there's different types of quote unquote neurodiversity that could be in there. And one of the things where Spider-Man says, oh, I wear the mask because it dulls my senses. I feel like that's kind of what the medication does for me, because instead of all the squirrels and all the extra noises and all the extra things that will catch out of the corners of my eye, I don't catch them as much. And it helps me just focus and concentrate and be more present versus my senses just being hyper focused, which back in the day when we were cavemen, the people with ADHD were the heroes because you'd hear a little snap in the bushes that other people wouldn't hear, or there'd be a saber-toothed tiger that would come and we're the first one to grab our spears and charge. We're the ones that are at the front lines. So if someone thinks that they have dyslexia, you could go to the International Dyslexia Association or just type into Google, do I have dyslexia? And the IDA has like a 10-question quiz. And then there's other things, I think I have ADHD. No corporations that I know of are requiring you to go out and pay to get those tests. It's only schools. And oh my gosh. Okay. So if you think your kids have this or you've gotten your kids tested, fight for them. I actually made a documentary. It's called Blessed with Dyslexia. The link is on my website, neurocreatives.org.
And it'll be in the show notes.
I've talked to so many professional teachers. I've talked to people that are in the profession working at dyslexia schools about the school system is set up just to let's get the masses through. We're so overworked and so overloaded as teachers, and the curriculum is still very neurotypical in how it works. And you talked about finding your purpose and everything. I've always worked in corporate America, Fortune 500 companies. And my advice in order to get to a VP level is I had to get a master's degree. And I tried to go back a couple times. there's a GMAT test that you have to take in order to get into the MBA program. I failed it. I bombed it. I scored in the bottom 12%. And this is after taking 2 classes on how to pass it. And then I had a friend that was from San Francisco, and he said, Josh, do you think like a designer? You're very innovative. Why are you trying to get an MBA when your brain doesn't work that way? You should go to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. We're in Atlanta area. And I looked it up, and you have to submit a portfolio instead of taking this test. And my wife is born and raised in Japan. I tried to learn Japanese for a decade, from everything from Rosetta Stone to private tutors to classes. And I came up with a very verbal and visual way to teach myself Japanese it was mnemonic triggers that would get my brain about 75% of the way there. And then I could remember the rest. And I submitted that as part of my portfolio. And the dean of the design thinking program called me 3 days later. And he said, where did you find this? Where did you see this? I've been trying to learn Japanese for the last 10 years, and I've tried everything and I can't learn it. And these 5 words that I had submitted in this design process, he said, I can't get these out of my head. And I said, well, this is the way my brain works. And he gave me a scholarship. And I said, no, I worked for GE Capital at the time. And I said, GE was going to pay for my master's degree. You don't need to. He said, no, you're a business person that understands design thinking. You need to come here. And for the very first time, I got straight A's in a master's program with 0 design background. But the way that neurodivergent brains work and the way that we've had to survive in a neurotypical world is design thinking. And these are the skills of the future because AI can't do them. So if you match up what the World Economic Forum says are the top 10 job skills of the future, and you match up what skills come naturally to neurodivergent people trying to fit into a neurotypical world, they overlap perfectly. So everybody that's listening that thinks, why is this happening to me? It's happening because it's getting you ready for that future world, because you're going to be able to do the human skills that AI can't do. And your kids are going to be able to do these human skills that AI can't do. So it might feel like a punishment right now, but it's preparing you to conquer and just have a beautifully appreciated brain in the future.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And that speaks to why we want to embrace all of ourselves.
Yes.
Why it would be worth it to just see if there is a neurodivergence, and then instead of hiding from it, leaning into it to see how you can really focus on your strengths.
Yeah.
Are you ready to redefine wealth and transform your life? Join the Institute for Redefining Wealth. It's a 12-month journey to financial wellness using our unique 6-pillar framework. We'll be your accountability partner, offering clear success paths, resources, and the motivation you need to stay on track with your professional and financial goals. So act now to connect with purpose chasers from around the world as we all level up pillar by pillar to achieve the lives we desire. Our Getting Started section is the system I've used personally to see huge visions come to pass over and over again. It is the foundation for how you leverage the pillars to support what you say you want to create in and for your life. And then you'll use Pillar Foundations. This is where the juice is. This is how you'll begin your 30-day authentic alignment audit. It'll help you identify areas of your life that may be out of sync with your goals. As a member, you'll gain access to in-depth training modules, categorized podcast selections, monthly themes and challenges with exciting cash and prize giveaways, plus exclusive bonus access and sneak peeks to more resources that will help you along your journey to redefining wealth. For more details, visit redefiningwealth.institute. That's redefiningwealth.institute to take your first step towards a transformed life today. I will see you in the Institute. I've told you this, I think, before about Reagan, that she would come to me and self-diagnose herself. Like all through elementary school, middle school, she'd say, I think I have this or I think I have that. But the thing I would always say is, well, wonderful. You're brilliant anyway. Yes. So that doesn't take away from anything. We would just lean on your strengths. And I even do that for myself. And again, I don't know. I mean, every time I talk to you, I'm like, do I have? Right. But I still have learned, I think, even if you're listening and you are neurotypical, It is so important, I think, for all of us to really lean into our strengths and know that we were born on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. There was no mistake in our makeup, and we can use how we are made to literally be a force, our own force, and a blessing to others. But I think that trying to fit in with societal standards or expectations for any and all of us is really the problem, like for all of us. And I really do want more of us to just embrace that this is who I am. This is how I was made, and there was no mistake made on me.
Yeah. And your strengths coincide with your passions as well. So if you dive into your strengths, you're just going to lean into your passions and you're going to find that flow state that much more. And if people ever question why you're doing it, then that's your indicator that you're doing something right, that you're leaning in and you're breaking those societal norms. Because society wants to box everybody into place. If you're just boxed into place, you're not going to be anything other than just normal in the status quo. If you want to go above and beyond what everybody else is doing outside the status quo, you've got to be comfortable with doing that. And that's why I'm saying, if we can be guides and not judge ourselves, there's always 3 ground rules that I have. So I lead leadership, learning, and development at a Fortune 200 company. And I always have classroom ground rules. The number 1 ground rule is no judgment. Because as soon as you start judging yourself or you judging others, all of the creativity and brilliance just kind of leaves the room, and it's just groupthink, which is horrible. Yes, and is to build off of each other's ideas, because there's way too many, no, but I don't like that, or no, but that would never work. So we have to build on each other's ideas instead of tearing each other down. And then whenever we're starting something off, embrace rough and ugly to start. Because too often, at least in corporate, we need things very pretty and polished, but there's so much beauty in starting off with that rough and ugly and sharing those ideas, because that's where all the cracks in the foundation are going to be found. If you try to launch something that's pretty and polished and those cracks show up later, you're not going to have the time, money, or resources to fix them. Where if you share it early on and you don't have judgment and you have a yes and culture, collaboratively, it's going to come out way more solid and much more successful in the end.
Yeah. We call that sloppy progress in my community. And as an entrepreneur, I have believed for many years now, the 20 plus years that I've been in entrepreneurship, that clarity comes in the doing. I just have to get started, and everyone has a 1.0 version. And this idea that we have to wait for perfection or wait for everything to be just right. It's like by the time you get it just right, someone else is on their 5.0, 10.0 version, and they've got your clients, they've got your revenue, they've got your market position, and you could have at least been out there collecting data and just trying. And I think that holds so many people back. But I do also think that if you have been masking something like neurodivergence, I could imagine that there's an additional imposter syndrome that comes up, right? Where it's like that feeling that, well, I have to be perfect or they're going to find me out, could be a part of why some people really wait to do everything, because they're looking for that perfection that never really comes.
Yeah, part of my mission is to build a community of support, right? A lot of times when I talk, people are like, oh, it sounds like you're talking directly to me, or it sounds like you're sharing my story or parts of my story. And like you were saying, numbers, 20% of everybody, every culture all over the world is neurodivergent. And generally, if you have one, you have another. It always brings a friend to the party. 50% of people that have one type of neurodivergence have another. And it might just be a little bit. I'm severely dyslexic. I still probably read at like a 5th grade level. I'm a fantastic skimmer and I'm really good with bullets. But if you send me a book to read, I won't do it. I'll just pick up the phone or I'll ping you back and say, hey, can you bullet this down for me?
So wait, stop right there, Josh. Stop right there. Even if you say to someone, hey, can you bullet this down for me? What a courageous thing to do. I think in some work settings, where if you are in school or at work, or even in my case, like in a program where someone is just giving you lots and lots of reading and literature and you have gone undiagnosed, so you are just maybe struggling with it on your own. This is back to the masking. Is this where you see people maybe come back with a lot of excuses almost, or just rationalizations like, oh, my kids were sick. Oh, I got busy. Oh, I had this thing in the family. Oh, I didn't really get around to it. Can you tell me a little bit more? Because as someone who's always on meetings for different things, it can be frustrating. And again, why I'm so thankful that I know you and that you are teaching me so much, because I realize sometimes now that maybe that person isn't just making excuses because they don't want to do the work or they didn't want to maybe they literally can't focus on all of these things that they've been assigned. Is the onus on us, neurotypical people, to be not understanding, but just aware that that could potentially be a thing? Or is the onus on you to say, hey, I need this in a different way?
Yeah, it's both, because we need to create the world that we want to live in. The world that I want to live in is someone sends me bullets instead of a booklet. So I will tell people, and you don't have to self-diagnose. You don't say, hey, I have dyslexia, you need to send me bullets. You just say, hey, I'm a slow reader. I hear this all the time. Oh, hey, I'm a slow reader. Whether they know it or not, it could be because you have dyslexia. It doesn't mean you do. But I will usually say, hey, this is a ton of words for me. Can you just give me the cliff notes? Can you put it in bullets? What's the bottom line? And most people will just say, oh, yeah, here, sure, let's do that. Or they're like, hey, can I call you and let's talk about it? Every now and then there is someone that's like, well, I explained everything. Everything that you need to know is in that 3-page document. And I will say, yeah, I need you to simplify it for me. It's like there's too much information. I don't know what's important and what's not important. So it's more work to simplify something than just do verbal diarrhea on the page. They just spew everything out, and it's, verbal vomit. Sorry, not painting lovely pictures here. But it's easier for them to just throw everything out than try to simplify it for you. And you do this 2 to 3 times back to someone, and eventually you're training them to say, oh, if I'm communicating with Josh, then I just need to give him bullets. Otherwise, he's going to call me. And even if it's a more senior person, then I'll just do it a lot more politely. I'll say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm a slow reader. Could you just possibly tell me what the bullets are here? Or can I set up a 15-minute phone call to get a better understanding of what it is?
Yeah, this is so good. I'm literally thinking of a few people that I have to work with, or I choose to work with, at different periods throughout the year. And now it makes sense to me why they're always suggesting to get on a call. Now, on the other side of that, I don't like getting on calls and meetings all the time. But what I started to do was explain in looms. I was in a Loom video, and instead of having a 20-minute call, I might be able to distill my thoughts down to a 3 to 5 minute Loom, which they can also speed up. And Loom also provides a summary now with AI, with the high level takeaways were. And so I'm finding ways to honor myself while also honoring what is going on, that now I choose to believe that I'm so charming. People just want to talk to me. But now I realize it could be the length of the emails. I don't send booklets via email, but sometimes the way that I'm thinking is brainstorming, getting it all out. And I try to do bullet points, but they're still kind of paragraphy. And this is so good to know, because I want to be a helpful human. I want to help the people that I'm in community with, whether they are vendors or partners or clients. But when you don't know, you don't know. And when we've all been raised in these settings, Josh, where we were taught to just be still, sit there, and especially as women, be polite, be thoughtful. It feels more nurturing to give a long explanation than to be direct. And I can see how this all comes to a head in this season.
Yeah. Once again, no one should ever have to self-identify, but it's understand your challenges and understand your strengths. And if one of your challenges is sitting still, or one of your challenges is finishing a project, or one of your challenges is reading, understand that and then know what it is that helps and just be comfortable asking for it. Hopefully your community is accepting of you and who you are and delivering what you need, how you need it. So there shouldn't be a lot of challenges. What do you mean, bullet it down? What do you mean you don't want a phone call? What do you mean you don't want the video, the face-to-face? That's why it goes back to if we're just guides and we understand, if someone says, hey, I prefer it in this way, then we just try to accommodate that. We don't need to ask why. We just, if someone's asking for something, we just try to be accommodated.
In our community, we talk about giving voice to truth. And this is such a great example of just asking for what you want, asking for what you need. But also, I love what you said. It's also teaching people how to treat you, how to work with you, how, it's not about trying to quote unquote enforce boundaries. Well, you do enforce boundaries, but it's not about telling them. It's about you holding the frame of understanding, this is how I learn best. This is how I work best. And this is how we can collaborate and be in relationship and partnership best. So I'm always going to lead with, this is how I work best. And even on the other side, I'm really going to lean into I send 3-minute Loom videos instead of 20 to 30-minute meetings because I don't want to sit on meetings for the rest of my life. That doesn't feel like freedom to me. While being respectful of what you need, want, and desire, I also get to honor what I need, want, and desire. And we can hopefully find a way to coexist and support one another and not demonize either's practice. That's what I'm hearing.
That's the yes and. That's we will meet each other in the middle. I won't judge you. I won't judge myself. You won't judge me. And we'll figure out the best way to work together.
I see this too as a people pillar thing. This is not just about work. This is about our relationships. This is about our friendships. This is about our parenting. That if we just come from this level of more awareness that everyone does not process the way that we do, everyone does not necessarily quote unquote focus. They don't look like they're focusing the way that you do. And just more compassion in general. Wow, how much richer can our relationships and experiences be?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about in marriages and romantic relationships, like you said, if someone looks away and you go, you don't even care about me, you're not even listening to me. And it's well, maybe they're just really trying to focus on what you're even saying. There's just so many ways to think about this, but I really do appreciate how you are helping so many of us as purpose chasers in this world, light workers, be better at the work and purpose we are called to. And for you to share, as I know you've done many times, that even with the dyslexia, a 5th grade reading level, you would call it, but to be in the position that you are and have been in corporate America for so long, what a wonderful testimony to what's possible when we lean in and not be ashamed of neurodivergence for any of us and all of us, any of the things that make us who we are. What a beautiful example you are. And I really appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
How can people keep up with you, Josh, and learn more about your work?
I'm on LinkedIn. Last name is Crafford, Crafford. There's no W. I guess my ancestors were dyslexic as well. But my website is neurocreatives.org. And once again, no one has to self-identify. You don't have to be neurodivergent. And I call it a difference. I never call it a disability. So I love that, you would really call it neurodivergence as well. But yeah, it's neurocreatives.org is the best way. I have links to my documentary on there as well. That's the best way.
Yeah. And in the show notes, I'm going to link to your website, your LinkedIn, and the documentary, which was brilliant. I got to watch it about a year ago and love. everything that you do. I love our coffee talks, friend. And I'm so grateful to finally have gotten you on the Redefining Wealth podcast. You guys, please check out Josh's work. He's absolutely incredible. And if you are in corporate America in particular, and you want someone to come in and support your neuro creatives in the workplace and just bring some more light to the topic so that everyone can feel at home and at ease with how they learn, how they process, how they focus, and how they use their purpose in the marketplace, I do really want to encourage you to check Josh out and everything that he's up to. Until next time, I personally want you to go live your life's purpose, find fulfillment, and earn more without ever feeling like you have to chase money. I'll talk to you later.